Hi everyone, this is Creative Tokyo. I imagine you found us on Meetup, or you've already known of us or our friends. So welcome. This is one of those few online things that we're doing, but I decided to do this online partially because one, I'm in Boston, and two, sometimes it's easier to get the message out to a larger group and larger audience over Zoom and these calls. So thank you for coming. Um, Let me just run through this real quick so in case you haven't heard of us before. What we are, we're a community where you can make friends, find work, and learn from experts like Rionne while having fun. So core of it being fun. We're on all these channels. If you want to come and follow us, we do have a job board for people who are looking. If you are looking, there are some great opportunities out there. We're highlighting a few of our friends, I suppose, who are looking for great people. So just a shout out there. But yeah, without further ado, let's welcome Rionne. So he is CEO and Director of Japan Media Services. And if you haven't seen this already, this is his newest film. It is like there are like a million awards slapped onto it right now. So this is kind of the segue into yeah. So let's learn from him. Like how did he do this? How did he craft the story to, get to this point? So yeah, in that case, yeah, let's just get started. So welcome, Ryan. Um,
Hey.
if you don't mind giving us a brief intro on what you typically do, that'd be great.
Okay. Um, well, filmmaker. Mostly have been doing lots of branded documentaries for the BBC, and kind of their person in Japan when it comes to short documentaries, and did some work for NHK World as well, and also for the Fukushima government. And I'd always wanted to make action movies
Ooh,
due to my martial arts background, but found myself somehow making documentaries. And I think I'm much better at making those than action films, but I enjoy them a lot.
nice. Interesting. That's like quite a stretch, but I mean, are they similar in some respects that you enjoy both?
Um, no, not really. Documentaries are about telling people's stories, and other films are about telling the story you want to tell, a fictional story. So in this case, I
Gotcha.
I gave a voice to the single mothers who normally wouldn't have a voice.
Yeah, which is amazing, right? Because nobody really talks about them. And full disclosure, I am now a single mom. I ran away from abuse. So I kind of, yeah, like when I first heard about your documentary from someone on Slack, it was like, oh, I gotta support this. I hear about this
Mhm.
sometimes, but not nearly enough. And you feel super, super isolated if you're somebody in that space, right?
When I
So,
first started researching about it, I couldn't find a single documentary on the topic. I found
mm,
one small short film on YouTube. It's about 7 minutes long, about a African American in an African American community in the US, but it was shot. It looked like it was kind of shot on an iPhone, and it wasn't professional, and there was absolutely
mm,
nothing. The topic hadn't been touched anywhere in the world, anywhere.
mm.
There were news stories, and some people had done like Zoom interviews and like little YouTube videos, but no one bothered to lift up the carpet and let all the cockroaches out and all the things that are hidden in Japanese society, because my film's about Japan single mothers in Japan, but I'm sure this is happening all over the world.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, like, I guess, with that segue, like, what was your creative process like for writing the story for this film?
Okay, well, I didn't write a story. That's one thing. I researched it. I wrote a treatment. What I thought, and surprisingly, there was a lot of information online about
Mm,
Japanese single mothers. There had been a lot of stories being written, and there were lots of NPO groups, but it was only text. So I kind of had an idea somewhat what I wanted to do, but I had uh, zero knowledge of. I'm just it's just from my research from Googling, and it took me at least to the fourth interview to really understand what's going on. And actually, in the film, there's a university professor called Dr. Jeff Kingston, and he was the first one that really helped me understand what's going on. Because the original first few interviews were mothers who didn't really want to open up, and that's a
mm,
theme in the film is that the Japanese they're very proud people, and they don't want to admit that they're poor, and they'll do
mm.
anything to let you know that everything's okay when it's really not. Only 1 in 7 mothers receive welfare support from the government. It,
Really?
lots of factors like they're afraid that the child will be bullied at school if it's found out that they're from a single parent family. Um, and Japanese pride. Less than 20% of fathers are paying child support. There's no
Yeah.
repercussions in Japan for that. And in general, the system can actually be fixed quite easily, but because there's no spotlight on it, there's no need at the moment for anyone to change anything. But if we can get the ball rolling, and if we can get the topic out there, because you know what the Japanese are like, they're slow to start, but when they do
Mm,
start, everyone comes together. But they're very slow to start, but when the dominoes start falling, Japan, they all come together because they move. They're it's a group orientated society, so they move as a group. But it takes that first domino to knock down to get everything rolling. So I hope the film can be the first domino that knocks
mm.
everything over and starts a nice little movement.
Yeah. And like you were able to take these research pieces and kind of like weave it together into
Well,
like more of a coherent.
I was very conscious that I didn't want this to be a sob story. This is not a
Mm.
this is
Yeah.
not a kawaii or poor you poor single mothers. Um, this is a story about warriors, and we have a Kenyan warrior in there. We have Japanese warriors in there, and these mothers are battling every day, and it's
Mm.
tough. It's tough, but uh, they're not victims. I mean, what there are victims of domestic violence in there, sure, but they don't see themselves as victims. They're warriors, and it was important to tell their story, but it was also important not to take any political sides, and it was important just to state the facts. The facts are this, and these single mothers back it up with their stories. So I researched numbers quite a lot.
Mm.
Used a lot of government statistics and OECD statistics, and people probably don't even know what the OECD is. It's the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development. I didn't know what it was when I first started. I was like, "What the hell is the OECD?" And it had come up a couple of times when some of the economics papers that I had read. And so I had to put that in the film as well, because you can't assume everybody knows everything. So I had to have people explain, in layman's terms, what is the OECD? Why is Japan so far behind everyone else in the OECD? And it's an organization for advanced nations, and Japan is doing terribly poor amongst its fellow advanced nations.
Mm. Interesting. So it seems like a lot of what you did was research and putting those pieces together to create the actual film. Like, was there, I guess, a way that you were trying to weave it through so that, like somebody who's watching would remain interested and like I don't know anything about,
Right.
how
Well,
film works. So
okay. Well, the first thing is you have to have a clear path in a documentary. It can't be all
mm,
over the place. It can't be mixed and jungled, because then you'll be like, wait, didn't you say that 30 minutes ago? So what you have to do is you have to gather all your interviews together. And what I did for this interview was, because most of it was in Japanese, and I speak pretty fluent Japanese, but I knew that it was going to be a bilingual film. So from the very beginning, I subtitled every single word of every single interview before I even put the film together. So that was so that I knew everything that every mother said and that every professional said, every expert. I had to make sure that I didn't miss a thing, and I didn't want to leave anything out that needed to be in there. So I made sure that every interview was subtitled. If it was in English, it was subtitled in Japanese, and if it was in Japanese, it was subtitled in. That's the first process, and that took, you can imagine, like interviews over an hour. Sometimes they go off on tangents that you don't know what they're going to say, so you have to really, if it was all in English, it might have been a different process. Because it was a bilingual film, I wanted to make sure that I had everything, all my bases covered. And then from there, you start clustering into different themes. So whenever someone talked about domestic violence, I'd put that over to one side, right? And then so you start building up groups of, okay, these people all talked about domestic violence, well, these people all talked about child support, and these people all talked about history. And then
Mm.
putting the groups together, then you start looking at, okay, well, what is interesting, what don't I need? So you got to hook people from the beginning, because in filmmaking you lose people within 20 minutes. That's the
Yeah, 20
first
minutes.
of any film, not just a documentary. You got about 20 minutes before people,
Mm.
because now the streaming world, they'll just they'll stop. Or if maybe not in the cinema, but people have walked out in the cinema if it's a boring film. But you really got to hook them in 20 minutes. So for me, I wasn't trying to go for too much of a shock thing, but I put the numbers up first. Did you know? And
Mm.
this is a thing that the way I started it was, I started it from a foreigner's point of view. Japan is this ultra technologically advanced nation, but did you know it's really not? It's the nation of robots. It's the nation of this. But did you know it's actually, there are a lot of people left behind. There are a lot of people who are not technological. I mean, it's a nation that still uses fax machines, right? So it's really, I mean, the facade of this is a technologically advanced nation and everyone here is middle class and above is really not true. And so that's why the theme of hidden poverty really
Mm.
started to come out. And that was never the original intent. The original intent was just to showcase the single mothers. But I started learning about hidden poverty, and Japan is the king of hidden poverty. It's not African
Mm.
poverty. It's not San Francisco poverty, where the homeless are all on the street in San Francisco or in LA, and they're all drugged out of their minds, and it's a horrible, horrible. It's not like that. Japan is very clean, and but there is massive amounts of poverty here. We just can't see it, right? And this is part of the Japanese psyche. So that really came
Interesting.
out. That really came out, the whole the hidden poverty thing. The fact that we have Kodomo Shokodo, the kids
Mm.
cafeterias, the fact that we even have them in Japan, it blew my mind, right? And I put a big part of the film towards kids cafeterias. Like before I started the film, I had no idea that they even existed,
Yeah, like I didn't even know this existed,
right?
and that was
It's
the
like,
first time I even heard about them.
yeah, it's like and there are different kinds of kids cafeterias. I went to two of them, and one of them in the Tokyo one was more to foster community relations. There were some poor people there, but there were some middle class people there. But they all came together and the kids could play together. And that's a big part of another message of the film, is that we tend to isolate ourselves these days, and we tend to stick to small little clusters.
Mhm.
So that was one good thing about the Tokyo um Kodomo Shokodo kids food pantry, is that it fosters community relationships. But out in the countryside, when I went to the one in Ishikawa, I mean, there was one lady there had a kid on her back and holding two kids in each hand and 5 plastic bags, and she was just like, it was like sume hode, right? It was like put in as much as you can, put as much in the bag as you can, and the food was all basically expiring food, and these women are desperate and to do
Mm.
whatever they can, and they're probably not as proud as the ones in the Tokyo Kodomo Shokodo, but it was a real eye opening for me to see that, because before I started this film, I had no idea about any of this. We
Mm.
kind of know as people, oh yeah, single mothers. I guess yeah, it must be hard. I guess it's hard, but we don't think about it. And then I opened
Right.
Pandora's box and I went down the rabbit hole and I just kept pulling out all this stuff, and it was It was mind-blowing.
I guess like, did it help that, you were kind of coming into this topic cold? That yeah,
Completely
you didn't really
cold.
have any idea. So
Yes,
you kind of
because
understood why somebody would be shocked.
the journey that I take everybody on in the film is the journey that I took.
I
It's
see.
my journey of discovery, right? It's not, hey, look at these poor single mothers. It's I discovered these people and this is what I learned without putting my own voice in. I was very careful to stay right out of it. And just let the mothers and the experts talk.
Mm. So it's like straight from the source. This is through your eyes, like what you saw.
Mhm.
Okay. Interesting. So I guess like kind of following up, like what do you think like made it so successful as a story that like gripped people, got so much support and so many awards? Like what do you think, was kind of a catalyst for that?
The topic.
The topic. Okay.
The topic sells itself.
That's uh-huh.
People, I didn't have to do anything. I just had to open the box,
I
and
see.
I mean, the whole world now is all about the 17 SDG goals, and
Mm.
the first goal in SDG is to eliminate poverty. And
Uh-huh.
it's more and more, and especially now in the news in Tokyo, it's like every day you hear about some politicians talking about child rearing, or they're talking about the lack of births, more deaths in Japan than births, or come to Tokyo, we'll give you 5,000 yen. Leave Tokyo, we'll give you 1 million yen. It's nobody, it's there's always something in the news, and I think the timing of the film is really really good.
I see. So part of it is definitely the place, the I guess the external circumstances as well, right? The environmental
Mhm.
place where in which you introduce the film.
And basically the stuff that I put in the trailer is raw. It's like
Yeah.
there's one girl there in the trailer. If you, it might be a good time to put the link for the trailer in there if anyone wants
In
to watch
case
it
you
later.
yeah.
There's one lady in there who she runs a mother's group. She's the one that runs the Kodomo Shokodo in Ishikawa, and she said that mothers can't afford a 3,000 yen bag of rice, right? But they can afford a 50 yen bowl of rice at the kindergarten. I mean, that's pre-war poverty stuff. That's not the Japan that we know. People can't afford a
Right.
3,000 yen bag of rice. Um, it's when I heard that, I wanted to cry my eyes out. Right? And it's like
Yeah.
it's the whole world is doing it tough. The whole world is doing it. We're in the middle of a real down period for mankind. Everyone seems to be we're in recessions. In the middle of a war. Everyone's doing it tough. It's but we have to come
Mm.
together. We have to come together to help out the people that are not as fortunate.
Yeah, definitely. So I guess like part of it was introducing those raw emotional pieces like that are surprising. Is that kind of the thinking behind the trailer?
Yeah, yeah, 100%. I just wanted to let people know this is happening. There are people like this
Mm,
in this country that you would never have thought.
yeah. Oh man.
Don't think of you don't nobody associates the word poverty with Japan. It's just you just don't. It's just not a thing. When you think about poverty, well, you can think of some African nations perhaps. So you might think of, places, I don't know, like Laos or poverty in Thailand, but you do not ever associate poverty with Japan because it's so hidden. It's out of
Mm,
plain sight. It's hidden in plain sight. We just don't see it. So that's the biggest theme is hidden poverty. Like you might look at a kid across the seat from you on a train on the Yamanate line, and he might have a nice jacket on, but he might have gone without breakfast, right? He might be
mm,
going home to an abusive father, right? Or a mother who's a hostess and doesn't come home until all hours of the morning. But we'll never know that because he looks good because he's gone to Uniqlo and bought a cheap jacket. We just don't know. And so
right.
another message of the film is to try to sort of somehow it's difficult, but to people are giving out SOS cries for help in their own way, and it's
Mm,
maybe up to us to say hello to your neighbor. Hey, how are you? If you see something that's not quite right in the train, or off your, how many times have we seen strange things on the train in Japan and people just bury their heads in the phone?
Yeah, that's kind of the
And it's
culture.
kind of like it's a time for us to start putting our antennas out a little bit and just seeing if there's anything we can do to help.
Hmm. Interesting. So I guess like it seems like a large theme of this is uncovering hidden pieces of, I guess, people's lives, right? Because I think in general, Japanese people tend to be pretty private. They don't want to like share their real name on social media and whatnot. That's kind of where you can start to tell, right? And like people don't want to have, you know, I guess, part of it is just the culture, but is that something that makes it easier, I guess, for people to be interested? It's like because you don't know, there's so much to know.
Well, I mean, when I shared the trailer, everyone online was like, "What? Japan?" That no one knows. That's probably the most shocking thing. It
Just
was
like the
very
shock
hard for me.
factor.
It was very hard for me to find mothers willing to talk. The fact that I got the one woman talking about domestic violence was a godsend. She
Mm.
it was. I mean, I messaged over. Let's just say I messaged every single mother NPO in Japan, and they all ignored me except for I got 3 replies out of about 15 emails. So there's probably only about 15 single mother organizations. I think I got 3 replies. 2 of them said, "Sorry, I can't help you." And one of them jumped on it and said, "This is the most amazing idea I've ever heard." And that was
Mm.
Mayumi-san, and she's in the film. That's Heartful Family. They do
Mhm.
great stuff. I also emailed basically every single Kodomo Shokudo in Tokyo. Believe me, that's a lot. There are more than you think. Every coup has at least 4 or 5. Every ward. Setagaya coup has probably 6. And
Okay.
I would say I was sent out at least 70 to 80 emails to kids' cafeterias. None of them replied except for about 5. I had 3 Zoom meetings. 2 of them said no. And then the one that agreed is the guy that's in the film. I do wonder if these organizations, why didn't they take me up on this? Do they really want to help, or what's going on? But I was lucky to get the people that I got. They were great in the film. Did a great job, gave me plenty of information.
Yeah.
Sorry if I got off track a little bit.
No, definitely. Because like part of it seems to me, at least like for documentary storytelling, like you need that raw data, right? Those raw voices to showcase in the film. And like the fact that you're having so much trouble even like getting there, right? That people don't want to talk about this
Well,
topic.
no, just didn't
And
want to talk about it. No one wanted to,
yeah,
especially the domestic violence people. A lot of, and I can
right.
understand that. A lot of them
I mean, it's
said,
like it can be stigmatized, right? It's very easy to become, oh, like you're that person who, talked about all of your, your issues and, be looked down upon. So there's probably a lot of, yeah, a lot of stuff going on, I'm sure.
yeah, well, the domestic violence people told me straight up, "Hey, sorry, I escaped to get away from being in any kind of limelight. I don't want anything. Sorry, don't include me in this," and that's okay. Uh,
Mm.
yeah, it was tough. There's one mother in the film who had an amazingly emotional story, and she rejected me for almost a year, but I really wanted to put her story in there. And at the end, she wilted and she said, "Yes, but you got to change my voice and you got to change and blur out my face." So
Mm.
I filmed it, the entire interview out of focus. So I don't even have the original data of her clear face. That was a big no-no. She wouldn't, right? She wanted to make sure
Right.
that it was filmed with a blur from the beginning, so that it's there, but her face is not there. And then she
Mm.
told us that horrible story about how she was working, what was she saying, 10, 11 hours a day and not even making, like 200,000 yen a month, trying to feed two kids, pay rent, pay electricity, and it's and this is a problem overall with Japan is and it's in the news a lot lately. It's about the lack of wage rises in the country.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And like this is completely different from, I guess, like the poverty you'd see maybe in like the States or, kind of in the Western world, right? Where you see people on the streets, which is very different because these people are working,
Mhm,
right? Yeah.
mhm.
Interesting. So definitely a lot of like what you would expect and what is, and like the gap between them seems to be like a big hook. Um, and I'm just trying to analyze what you've been saying thus far.
Yeah, I'm just kind of speaking off cuff and very emotional. Just my experiences from the film.
Mm,
I don't have any clear plan in my head what I'm going to speak to you about today. Just telling you as it comes from my chest, kind of thing.
yeah. Yeah, definitely. So,
I
like
like this
it
comment
almost
here.
like you've done this so often, like you've done this so many times that like you're it comes
I've
naturally.
become an expert on single mothers, and I don't have any connection to single mothers at all. I mean, now I know quite a few, but before I didn't know a single one. You know,
Yeah.
this is
And like
by the way,
is this like
you can see
anthropology?
you
Mhm.
can see sorry, I'm gonna call out Mary here, but she's commenting here, and Mary is a single mother. She really helped me a lot. She writes here, authenticity is the best, and it's true. I met Mary, and she brought with me with her to the meeting a nice piece of paper that clearly explained what she thought should be in the film. Luckily, I had most of it already
Mm.
checked off, but there are a couple of points that I really liked what she wrote, and little things that people contributing in very different ways and in their own way to help make the film what it is.
Mm. Just like there was, initial like there was already demand for this sort of thing, right? Like
Mhm,
people wanted this,
mhm.
but they weren't really willing to like, for example, show your own face.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm. Well, I mean,
Interesting.
honestly, without Heartful Family, the NPO
Mhm.
that agreed. I mean, they introduced me to the idea of Podemos Chocolate. But here's the thing. So when I wrote my first treatment, I didn't include anything about children's cafeterias, Podemos Chocolate. There was nothing in there about hidden poverty in my original
Mm.
treatment. And one of the the single mothers in there, there's two Buddhist monks, and that's a complete coincidence, by the way, that we have in there. The younger one, she's 20, she was 28 at the time. And when we did the interview with her, she was one of these proud ones. Like the other one, Fumi, that was the one that talks about being beat from the neck down. She was
Mm.
complete. Fumi was open and completely open, but the younger one was hesitant. And every time I tried to get in personal about her and ask her about her life, she completely closed, put a wall up.
Mm.
All she kept talking about was kodomo shokodo, kodomo shokodo, the kids' cafeteria. I'm doing it for the kids. And I was just kind of like, oh my God, this is not going well. This is I've come all the way to Ishikawa and she's not giving me anything. And I couldn't see in front of my own treatment that she was giving me all this gold, but I just couldn't see it.
Mm.
And I went back to Tokyo with her interview. I was like, oh man, I didn't get anything about how hard it is for my because she just didn't want to talk about it. She was just completely closed and refused to admit anything. She was super proud. And then I was like, well, I need to use her because I went all the way out there and I filmed her and I got some amazing images of her with the kids. So then I started going through an interview and I was like, what's this Kodomo Shokodo that she's talking about? And then I was like, what? Japan has a need for this? Seriously? Food banks?
Mm.
That's how that grew. So that's a good example of a pot of gold that you didn't expect to get.
Right. And I guess like with user, like not user, I come from the design world, so a little
Mhm.
bit of that's in there, but definitely with interviews of, people, like you don't really know what you're gonna get, right? Unless you know that person very well and it's like a staged interview. That's
Mhm.
the impression I'm getting. So you're kind of
But
like following it. Hmm?
there's a question here. Is there a food banks in Japan? There are food banks in Japan.
How are they different? Oh, okay.
There are the Kodomo Shokoro is a bit different to food banks, but there are some food banks in Japan. A lot of them are run by foreigners actually, which is interesting. And a lot of international schools do their best to give food to the food banks. The Kodomo Shokodo kids cafeteria, there are many different kinds. I guess we can quickly explain what they are, since it seems that
It's like what is like kodomo shokudo? Yeah, that's a good point.
they are basically places, safe places for kids, and there's no discrimination. The nobody who runs these kodomo shokodos, nobody asks their background. That they don't talk about it. You're just welcome. There's a limited number, mostly only 30. The ones in Tokyo generally tend to be everyone comes and they have a meal together, and the food is donated.
Mm.
The one that I did in Ishikawa was different. That was where the people that ran it, they got all this soon to be expired food, laid it all out on the table. You can see some of this in the trailer. And basically you sign up, you pay 300 yen. And the thing is that some of the mothers couldn't even pay 300 yen, right? And one of the mothers, actually, she called up mine. She said, I can't afford to pay for myself to come to the food bank, so can I just send my kid? Like, so the mother couldn't afford 300 yen. That's really
Yeah,
poor.
yeah. You
And
wouldn't
so
expect that in Japan
my
for
being
sure.
my being the sweetheart that she is, said, you don't need to pay, just come. And they fill their shopping bags up with almost expired food and bottles of Coca-Cola and stuff like that. It's really sad. That was mind
Mm.
blowing. That was mind blowing for me. So there are different kinds of Kodomo Shokodo. And if anyone wants to donate their time, it's kind of hard in Japan to donate physical stuff to these. But I mean, all it takes is to look up. It's very hard because there's no information in English, but Kodomo Shokodo in Japanese and your local area, and I'm sure they'd be happy to have volunteers come down and help out. The only sad thing about Kodomo Shokodo is it's generally retirees that run them. It's
Mm.
not a whole lot of young people helping out. And if you look at the Kodomo Shokodo in my film, especially the Tokyo one, they're all over 70. And the
Oh
couple that
wow.
run that particular one in Setagaya, they used to own a cafeteria, a coffee shop, and they're both retirees.
Mm.
And yeah, they just, I guess, twiddling their thumbs at home and decided, you know what, let's do something.
So it only gets to that point where it's like, okay, we're gonna like actively help people. Like, no, it's more of a
Yeah.
side thing. Interesting. But yeah, like okay, like I guess yeah. Okay, somebody's saying like I guess it might be their guy. Like, yeah, I can totally see that happening.
Right.
Wow.
There's a good question here from Harumi-san.
Hmm.
And very happy to have been in previously in contact with Harumi. And she says, you know, she's asking about it has to go both ways to support, but willingness to receive support. It's very true. One of the key messages in the film is you have to take a hand that's out there. If someone puts out their hand and says, "Hey, I can help you," you know, don't be ashamed to say thank you, and don't be ashamed to take people's hand of support. Because it's very rare that people these days put their hands out and say, "Hey, I'm here to help."
Mm.
Yeah, it's so true.
Yeah,
The question there by Harumi.
that's true. Like it needs to be mutual. Otherwise, like you're not gonna get that connection and you're not gonna know what that person was trying to say in the first place, right? Interesting. All right, so we're probably gonna slowly segue into audience questions, but like before that, I think okay, so Teresa's putting all some great questions in here already. So let's see. I guess maybe this is like a little bit of a departure, but like just because we're in this community where we do have a lot of creative people, do you think how do you think AI is going to affect any of this?
You mean my industry or affect the film?
your industry as a whole.
Okay, well, that's AI is massive for us. It's a game changer. And
Mm.
for example, um, when we do subtitling, usually I would, if it's a Japanese interview, I would pass the interview on to a native Japanese person, and I'd pay them to transcribe it, right? So they'd listen and they write it, they type it out for me, right? Usually I can translate it myself. But now I cut all that out. Now we have
Mm.
transcription software that is 99.9% accurate. It can take a 1 hour interview, and the AI can transcribe that in under 10 minutes, most likely 5 minutes. It just in perfect kanji as well. You do need a native person to run over it very quickly, just to check. Sometimes the kanji can be wrong. And then you throw it into DeepL. You know, I don't recommend Google Translate. You throw it into DeepL, and you can get a basically almost perfect transcription and translation and subtitling in 20 minutes. It's still not perfect, and it still needs humans to intervene here and there and make sure it all makes sense. But I mean, a lot of people, I'm very sorry about to say, but a lot of people have lost their part-time gigs with me thanks to AI.
Interesting. Okay, so it's definitely helping you like operationalize, but it's not affecting like the core of what you do, right?
No, no, it makes things easier.
Awesome.
And the thing is that it's learning every time. So every time you throw, a transcription into the cloud, the transcriptions get better and better and better every time. The translations get better and better every time. The subtitles, the timing is accurate. It's quite incredible.
Yeah. It's always learning, right? All
Always learning.
right. I guess with that, let's switch into the questions that we're getting from the audience.
Mhm.
So let's see. We actually have a lot of questions. So first question, what is the difference between a story for like a movie and a treatment for a documentary? What do you think are some primary differences there?
A story for a fictional movie.
I suppose. Is that right? Whoever asked? Yeah, I'm gonna assume it's for a fictional.
Well, I mean, a fictional story is something you make up. I mean, it can be based on real life, but in general, it's not. It's especially now these days when everything's green screen and or computer animated. Um, it's completely different, and especially if a documentary is, unless you're doing an NHK documentary, that's basically entirely scripted.
Mm.
That's old school Showa Japanese style. No room for creativity. Sorry, I don't. But
Interest. It's all scripted. Like, what do you mean by that?
NHK is they basically know what's gonna happen before they film it. There's not a whole lot of
Oh.
room for creativity. You can't go off
Mm.
script in NHK either. Even if you're given this most amazing soundbite, right? You really got to push to get in there. Whereas with my work with the BBC, they're like, "What? They said that? That's amazing. Put it in there." It's completely different. It's very much the national broadcaster of England, the UK, versus the national broadcaster of Japan, and the difference is a chalk and cheese.
Interesting.
But
So there's
my treatment was very open. Like I said, I didn't
Mhm.
have a whole lot of the final film was not in my treatment. I had a rough guide about where I wanted to go, and I just asked the mothers what they thought about it. And if they didn't give me a good enough answer, that's okay. Move on. Move on to the next question because someone else down the
Mhm.
line will give me the answer that I need.
I see. Interesting. So there's quite a bit of a difference in terms of like what you can do.
I mean, that's that
Like when
that's
it's
to
fictional, you
me,
can just like,
that's the attractive part of documentary filmmaking is
I see.
there's so much scope to add, to take out, to
Mm.
craft a story um from stuff that really happened.
Yeah, and it's like serendipity, right? The
Mhm.
goal that you discover becomes part of the film. So like I love how you led the film based on the way you were discovering all these gems.
Well, that if anyone who hasn't seen it and will do soon, there are two very heinous crimes that were committed. Um and one of them has been covered up because it was an error by the Chiba government. And
Mm.
that was a case of a single mother who had been to pleaded with, she'd been to the Chiba prefectural government for 11 months straight, pleading with them. She owed 11 months of rent, back rent. And the rent was not big. It was about 20,000 yen a month, but she couldn't pay it. She couldn't afford 20,000 yen. And she was begging them and begging them for almost a year, where at the end they just said, nope, sorry, you're out. And when they came, they knocked on her door to kick her out. And she took the option of, instead of being homeless, she strangled her 14-year-old daughter to death and tried to commit suicide. And it came out later on that if just one person in the Chiba government had let her know that she was eligible for rent assistance, she could have got an 18,000 yen reduction and would have been paying about $20 US a month on rent the whole time. Right. And
Wow.
right. So that's been completely covered up. You can't see that in the news anymore. Um,
Mm.
and this is a massive problem that, going to the government, going to the ward office is a big hurdle and a big, very daunting thing for single mothers. There was the other story about the boy who got stuck in a gang and he desperately tried to get out, but he was a child of one of five, and his mother was a single mother, and she was so busy trying to provide for these kids. The husband had run off and left them, that he got stuck, and he had been sending out line messages to his friends saying, help me, help me, help me, I'm in trouble, I need to get
Mm.
out of this gang. And he was only 12 or 13, and in the end, I think they stabbed the boy 48 times and then burned him alive in a toilet and dumped his body in Kawasaki. But the most heinous part of that crime is the mass media, who instantly blamed the single mother for not being there to see what was happening. That's not her fault, right? She can't.
Right.
And when you have a single mother who's struggling so much, and when you're a young boy, you see that your mother's struggling. You don't want to bother her. You don't want to burden her. You can see that she's got four of them, yourself and four of your siblings to take care of. So he didn't say anything to her. He didn't tell her that he was in trouble, but he reached out to his friends online and nobody bothered to help him. And he was
Mm.
brutally tortured by this gang. And the boys went to jail and they're probably out by now. I know the lady that murdered her daughter in Chiba, she's already out. She went to jail for 7.5 years, but I mean, she got a life sentence. She's out, but she's not free. That's
Mm.
carry that for the rest of her life. And these are things that all could have been avoided. These things could have been avoided by, well, the Chiba government could have given the right information. And every single mother struggles with this information. You know,
Right.
you go to your local prefecture and you say, I'm a single mother. They drill you on the most ridiculous questions. Well, where's the father? Right? What are you doing for job? Instead of trying to be proactive and help, they drill you and they make you feel like a piece of shit for being a single mother.
Mm.
One lady off record told me that she was a divorced single mother and the cops stopped her. Japanese police stopped her, and they said, "Oh, where's the father?" Well, no, he's out of the picture. I mean, he's been gone for a long time. Well, we want to speak to him. Well, no, you can't because I don't contact him. He's got nothing to do with it. But
Yeah.
yeah, but we want to speak to him. And this kind of stuff. So sorry, I went on a bit of a tangent, but bit off. But you can see I get angry about it because it's the most ridiculous,
Yeah.
and it can all be avoided. It can all be avoided just by using common sense, which as part of my love-hate relationship. I mean, I love Japan. I've been here 18 years, but sometimes I wonder where the common sense is in some parts of this place. There's certainly no common sense when it comes to helping out, well, single fathers as well, but mostly single mothers.
Yeah. Dang. Yeah. That was definitely like one of the parts of the film where I cried.
I cried my eyes out for a
Yeah.
year editing that boy. I watched that over and over again,
Oh my
probably a
God.
thousand times, right? And I had to basically go and find all these photos and all these videos of this,
Oh.
and I had to edit that. It took me a year to edit that one scene. It ended up being, it was a 10-minute scene that I cut down. His part was about 3. I
Mm.
cried my eyes out many times watching that.
Oh
I feel
boy.
like I know the boy. I feel like I know the boy.
Mm.
Anyone wants to do their own little bit of research. Let me just find his name. There's lots of information in English as well. His
Oh,
name's
really?
Ryota Kawamura. Kawasaki. Kawasaki murder. Brutal. What you Here we go. I'm gonna put the Wikipedia link in the chat. Ryota Uemura. I mean, brutal. And these things didn't need to happen. These crimes didn't need to
Mm.
happen. If you know, if we can be a little bit more at put our antennas out. And the thing is with this boy, with Ryota Uemura, is that everyone in the neighborhood knew that the kids were bad. And they knew that
Mm.
he was hanging out with bad kids, and no one did anything.
Yeah.
So,
Interesting.
so
There's
that's
like
the
a
biggest
running theme here of like,
yeah,
we know,
that's
but
the biggest thing
not
of the
doing
film is
anything.
just try to recognize our cries for help. I mean,
Mm.
just came out in the news the other day that 17 elementary school students in Japan committed suicide last year. I mean,
Dang.
that's children under 12 years old are jumping in front of trains. I mean, what is going on? And why didn't anyone see their SOS, their cries for help? You know, it's something like
Mm.
500 students, elementary, junior, and high school students are committing suicide.
Yeah, like I knew the suicide rate in Japan was pretty high, but that is like
But
next level.
amongst
Yeah.
children, why aren't we taking care of our children? It's just, I mean, that blows my mind. So
Mm.
I'm thinking maybe that's a nice topic for and the next documentary. You know, children's mental health, especially in
Mhm.
Japan. If you fall behind just a little bit, you know, that's one thing about children of single parents is, you know, they're often not they can't afford to send their kids to juku, to cram school, so they're
Mm.
immediately behind everybody else, and that's where the cycle just never ends. Like we say in the film, like the Chinese young Fei sensei says in the film, the government could offer scholarships. They could help out with juku costs. There are many things that the government can do to help out these kids.
Right.
I don't know if I
Dang.
answered your question, but I brought up a lot of interesting things. So.
Yeah, no, definitely. Because like I think because you're leaning into reality and pulling that out and kind of
Yeah,
showcasing that process throughout the
I
film,
ripped the
like
band-aid
that's
off.
yeah.
It just won't stop bleeding. I can't help but see it
Oh
now.
my
You know,
gosh.
everywhere I go, everywhere I go.
Yeah, dang. So I guess, you know, like sort of a like the next question on the list, how do you like pace a documentary? Like how did you do the pacing for this film?
Well, first of all, you put every single piece of information you think needs to be in there, and it ends up being way too long. So, and then but for me, I knew I had to break it down and I had to make it easy to follow. You can't just throw all this information in because people will get lost. So I knew I had to break it down in segments, and I knew I needed to explain why. Why is this happening?
Mm,
So I had to delve into like who are the Japanese people. That's why I put the history section in there. You know how Japan
um,
changed from post-war. You know when it was a village, a farm community. Tokyo was destroyed by the air raids, and how they rebuilt the nation thanks to the Americans who wanted to send everybody into the Korean War. So basically, Japan rebuilt itself in 5 years because of the Americans' fear of communism. They were scared
mm,
that communism was going to come in through Korea into Japan, and they wanted to make sure that that didn't happen because Japan was essentially became the puppet of America for Asia, and the communists tried very hard to get into Japan. They tried really hard. They were sending in floats of cocaine, you know, across from Korea, hoping that the American military and the Japanese military would get addicted on cocaine so they could come in and take Japan easily. It didn't happen. They were smarter than that. But there was a threat of communism at the time, and Japan was in a great location for the States. So they threw all their money into Japan. They rebuilt the nation in 5 years. It went from nothing. It went from a war zone. No one had houses. People were living in holes in the ground in Tokyo to the
mm,
Tokyo that we know today in 5 years. That's part of the Japanese character. They're very good when, as I said, when they get on board with something, they do it fast and they rebuilt
mm.
very quickly. But they left some people behind. They advanced very quickly, but they left a whole bunch of people behind, and that's where the title of the film came from. The ones left,
I see.
right?
Okay, so it's coming from that like that economic that burst of economic growth,
Right.
but these people are still
Well, for
in
those who
that.
don't know, there was a massive economic growth for 20 years from 1955 to 1975, where the GDP just went boom right up. And and that led to the bubble, and we all know that the bubble later on burst, and
Right.
then there was the lost generation, and we find ourselves where we are now, where there's a lot of poverty. But yeah, I mean, it's the history part is super interesting. Why are the Japanese like this? Like what was the role of a mother in Japan before the war? And the role was that
Mm,
she worked in the family business, right? She was a mother second. She breastfed her baby, but it was taken care of by the grandparents. Her
mhm,
primary role, all young mothers, their primary roles in Japan were to work in a family business. Japan was a country of basically all home businesses. Sony was a home business. Panasonic, Nissan, they were all home businesses, right? And they all took off once the economic growth did. So I really wanted to explore in depth like the role of women in society.
mhm,
How did they change over time? And so the idea of the what's the word? The kakukazuko. I'm sorry, I can't think about it in English. Nuclear family. The nuclear family it's an American concept, and it came around in post-war, and this is a liberation of labor for women, because women your age they all worked very hard, and suddenly they were housewives. Suddenly they had
mm,
no need to work. But when the economy stopped going up, when the GDP stopped going up, and suddenly they were like, damn, we got to go back to work. But that massive gap in skill, in labor skills, right? And that's how all these single mothers came about, because they had been housewives for so long with no need to work, because the salaryman brought home all the money. All she had to do was cook, clean, and in the 50s, give him a bath. And suddenly
right.
she's got to go back. But what can she do when she's been out of work for so long? What can she do? Well, she can only do baito. And how much does a baito pay? What, it hasn't changed
Right.
in 20 years. Part-time job, minimum salary here hasn't changed in 20 years. And so this is where it all kind of started to sink in, for me, kind of really
Mm,
fit in. I had to go
yeah.
back. I had to go back, and I had to really start from the beginning. And that included going from 1945 right up until today.
Dang. Okay.
I mean,
That's
so I
crazy
could talk
because
about this for hours. I know we don't have long to go, but
no. Yeah, so we have like 5 minutes left. I think you're definitely uncovering a lot of, the thought process behind what you're doing. And like to me, it actually sounds a lot like anthropology, right? You're going in and trying to figure out what these people are doing, like the study of all people and all places at all times, that sort of thing. Um, but let's see, are there, I'm trying to like figure out what to close with. But I guess, like, if someone were to try to replicate your process, I guess, what would, how would you go about doing that? Like, if you were to, like, explain to a first grader, for example,
mhm.
how to create, like, what you're trying to do.
A first grade elementary school student. Well, okay, let's say I don't know, a film school student perhaps. Well, I mean, first find a topic that is interesting. I mean, truth be told, I had zero interest in a topic about single mothers originally, because I don't know any single mothers. I had no idea they were struggling. It didn't occur to me. I'm a martial artist. I love martial arts. I wanted to do that kind of stuff, and it's still my dream to make a wrestling documentary. The history of wrestling, of Japanese wrestling. But then I just kind of like, okay, well, I don't know anything about this, but I owe it to these mothers to do something good. I can't do it half-assed, because if I do, then I'm not going to help them. So I knew that I needed to talk to the right people. That was the big
Mm,
thing. Talk to the right people. And that was mostly experts, the university professors, and I knew that I needed to get real stories. So the process behind it was just keep talking to as many people as you can.
Yeah.
A lot of people were like, "What? You're interviewing someone else again? Really?" I was like, "Yep, I don't have everything yet. I need to keep going. I need to keep digging."
Interesting. At what point do you realize you have enough material? Like, is that kind of a
You just
gut
know,
feeling or?
you just know. You're like, okay, that's enough. Okay, I got enough.
Okay.
But then again, you know, when I had enough, I needed somebody to come in right at the end and kind of just fill in the gaps,
Mm.
right? And I was very lucky to have Dr. Greg Story from Dale Carnegie Tokyo. He's a longtime Japan resident, and he's got his finger on the pulse, and he knew everything. And we sat down, we had a chat, and he said, "Well, I'll plug the gaps for you." So
Oh, wow.
I asked him specific questions, right? Just to plug the gaps. That was kind of like he was kind of the one that kind of plugged the end gaps. So how long did it
Interesting.
take for you to make this film?
Yeah, I'm very curious.
It took me 18 months, but that's not every day kind of stuff. That's kind of like go shoot for the BBC, go shoot for NHK. Okay, now you got 2 weeks free. Because as a freelancer, you know, it's very up and down. You know, you get big jobs come in, and then you got it like when the last BBC job came in, that was 3 months straight. I couldn't think
Mm.
about single mothers. I had to put that aside. But it's always kind of in the back of your head, right? And then, you know, when you're on the job, like for the NHK stuff, you kind of, oh yeah, okay. I'll get to that later on. You kind of make notes about things. So, and then I'll sit down for like 2 weeks straight and just be like, okay, single mother time. And then I put it away again. And then around September last year, it had been dragging on for about 15 months. And I was like, I can't let these ladies wait anymore. Right. They've been waiting so long. And I was like, okay, got to get it done. So I basically took off the last 3 months of work last year and just sat at home and just finished it off. And it was incredibly painstaking going over it over and over and over and over again. Watched it over 1,000 times. And I watch it now when I have like private screenings, and I still see things. I'm like, oh, I got to fix that, you know. But no one else will notice that because you're your own worst critic.
I see. Yeah, because like as a viewer, you're just like engrossed in the story, right? Like you're not necessarily thinking of like, oh, how could it be better because you don't know any outside of like what you're being shown. So very interesting.
I think what we're about a minute left.
Hmm.
So what I'm doing now, if I can just give a quick plug, is I've teamed up with an organization called the National Mental Support Association. And what they're gonna offer is they're running courses for mostly for women. I mean, they are all women, but it is open to males. But most of their clients are women, and they hand out licenses. And so, as you know, Japan is the king of licenses. You need a menkyo here, right? You need a menkyo
Shikaku,
for
yeah.
everything. Everything here is you need a piece of paper. So what they're doing is they were originally offering it for 39,000 yen for a single mother, and that went down. I got it down to 19,000 yen. But now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna start opening up donations, and we're gonna call it like sponsor a single mother. So that would be for people who would like to pay that 19,000 yen, and it's kind of like sponsoring a child in Africa. You find out a little bit about who the mother is and what kind of course she's
Interesting.
interested in. This is only new. I've only come up with this idea in the last few days, and I still have to get it out there. I still have to put it on the internet. So what I'm gonna try and do is, and what this does is it helps get them back to work. One of
Mm.
the ladies in the film, she has a license in childcare and in hairdressing, but she told me that she couldn't use any of those licenses, right, because she was a single mother. So what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to these people are now they're offering licenses in different things, child minding and counseling and all these different kinds of things. And I managed to get the price down half. And if I can now start working out how to have people donate to sponsor a woman,
Yeah, now it's a branding exercise.
yeah, right. So that it doesn't cost the mother anything. And this company, I mean, they already agreed to cut the price by half. And when they still get paid because they got staff that they got to train them. So that's kind of my next idea, and I'm gonna start putting that up on LinkedIn pretty soon.
Yeah.
Once I get it out organized, and this just gives, because that's the biggest hurdle for single mothers is how can they get back into a good paying job if they even had a good paying job?
The
Most
economics.
most of them only
Yeah.
do baito. They only do part-time jobs. So
All right.
this
You
kind of
can't support
exciting.
anything like that.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
kind of exciting.
Cool. I guess like with that, do you wanna maybe Teresa, if you could put Rionne's like LinkedIn or something, just in case. Um, so that like if anybody's like interested and wants to talk to him like right away about that, we can do that.
There
But
will be
yeah,
some screenings
mhm.
that for anyone who has connections to the Tokyo American Club. There will be a screening in their ballroom, and that's on May 24th. And we're also looking at the which it'll be a closed screening, but Foreign Correspondents Club are most likely going to pick it up as well. But we like Teresa said here, we can easily organize screenings. It's not hard to rent out a room, and I can bring some of the single mothers down, and we'll probably
Yeah,
put a QR code up at the end, and ways to donate to single mother charity organizations and stuff like that. So I mean, there are lots of ways, and if anyone has any ideas about how to get the film out there, I'm always open. I'm all ears. I am trying to negotiate to get it screened in cinemas. That's what's keeping it back at the moment. Is why I haven't put it out publicly. Is I'm trying to get it on big screens first, or a streaming platform, and these things take time. But
yeah.
private screenings, and also putting it out on YouTube completely disqualifies me from film festivals. So I can't put
Really?
it on YouTube. I can't put it on Vimeo because I'd be disqualified from film festivals. So it can go on screens, and it can on theater screens, and it can go on streaming platforms, but it can't go on free services. So
Interesting. A nice little tidbit about the film industry there.
yeah. Yes, the film festival circuit is quite a circus in itself.
Gotcha. All right. Well, we're at time. So it was amazing having you talk with us about this and really important work that you're doing. And I think we're having a bunch of comments in the chat about like all the cool things that everybody is doing. So
Yeah,
definitely click on
we have a
those
quick
links.
before we go.
Yeah.
We have a quick message here
Mhm.
from Harumi, who says that her NPO is organizing a screening in June, and that would be cool. Look out
Yeah.
on LinkedIn for that. I mean, I'm open to all screenings, so if there's
Yeah.
anyone here who'd like to organize a screening in their community, please do get in contact with me.
Awesome. All right. With that, thank you guys for staying up late to yeah, listen to Ryan talk about his process and all the discoveries he's made.
Yeah,
So yeah,
thank you.
big thank you there. Yeah.